euros. The government has implemented a number of measures to reduce net migration. This includes restricting overseas students from bringing family dependents to the UK whilst they study, stopping overseas care workers from bringing family dependents, increasing the salary threshold from skilled worker visas ultimately to 38,700 and increasing the minimum income requirements to family visas. We recognise the levels of migration have been too high, and I took action immediately upon my appointment to bring those figures down.
William Cates.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my right honourable friend for his answer. But one of the main drivers of immigration over the last 20 years or so has been labour shortages caused by falling birth rates. And according to projections by Philip Pilkington and Paul Morland, if birth rates don't increase, then immigration will have to rise to over a third of the population over the next 50 years if we're going to maintain a sufficient working age population. So immigration on this scale has no democratic consent, and obviously the Minister has promised repeatedly to reduce net migration. So can I ask what discussions my right honourable friend has had with colleagues in the Treasury about this issue, and does he agree that the government must have a strategy to address falling birth rates to ensure that we don't always have to rely on ever-increasing rates of immigration?
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend makes about birth rates, and there are a myriad of social and economic factors that drive that. Beyond my control, I have to concede. But I have spoken with my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, about related issues, and recognising that GDP per capita is an important metric as well as overall GDP. We're ensuring that we invest in a British workforce. My right honourable friend, the Education Secretary, passionate about apprenticeships and lifelong learning. We want to be a high-skilled, high-income economy rather than a low-skilled mass migration economy. That remains the government's priority, and we are taking action in our immigration policy to reflect that desire.
Andy Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tehas Teklahaimanut Tesfaye is one of the elite female cyclists chosen to lead Ride London next month. She's also an asylum seeker living in a hotel in my constituency where the food is so bad it makes her sick and unable to compete. Last month, an investigation by Sustain found food for asylum seekers that was undercooked, past its sell-by date and infested with insects, and left them in some cases malnourished and hospitalised. Could the Secretary of State investigate this scandal and the responsibility of its contractor Clear Springs so asylum seekers like Tehas are not subject to such dangerous and degrading conditions?
Home Secretary.
Mr Speaker, I can assure you, the honourable gentleman in the House, that our contractors are expected to maintain standards. Where they fall below those standards, they will be held to account, and I will absolutely take a note of the case that he has raised.
Gilly Tolhurst.
Oh, thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the measures my right honourable friend has taken to tackle the levels of legal migration. But could my right honourable friend inform me if what assessment he has made of the expected impact of the new immigration salary list and what that will have on the net migration figure?
Secretary.
My honourable friend is at the front line of our fight against illegal migration, but legal migration is important. We have recognised that the figures have been too high in the most recent couple of years for a number of reasons, and we have taken, as I've listed, we have taken a number of measures. The combined impact of that is that, by our estimations, 300,000 people who would have previously have been eligible under the new regime that I have put in place will no longer be eligible, and that's the order of magnitude of change that we will eventually see once these proposals are fully implemented.
Tim Farrell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The refusal to allow care workers from overseas to bring a spouse with them comes at the same time as in Cumbria we're finding it impossible to fill at least a fifth of all the social care jobs. Would you explain to constituents of mine who are incapable or unable to find those people to care for them and their loved ones why it seems sensible to make people from overseas lives so miserable in coming over here to care for our loved ones they don't come at all?
Home Secretary.
Mr Speaker, I recognise in rural communities that recruitment and retention of staff is difficult, and in his constituency, which is a wonderful, beautiful, but very rural constituency, there are particular pressures. I can assure him the global supply of potential care workers is very, very significant. And actually, the issues with regard to where in the country those people work are more about the internal dynamic within the UK economy than the quantum of people around the world who would seek to work in the UK. There are plenty of people who would wish to work here, recognising that they are not allowed to bring their dependents with them. But the issue of where in the country those people work is actually a broader issue.
SNP spokesperson Alison Thewlis.
The cruel Conservative hikes to the visa minimum income threshold have caused deep distress, deep distress to many. Does he understand the pain that these changes have caused? And what message does he believe it sends out to those that would do us the honour of making their home in these islands, that he puts such a high price on love and family life?
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely right that any nation in the world puts conditionality on the people it accepts within its own borders. This country has a long-standing. In fact, I'm a product of this, as are my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, the Trade Secretary, and many others within the government, of a long-standing tradition in this country of being open and welcoming. However, when we see the orders of magnitude of legal migration that we've seen over the last couple of years, it is incumbent upon us to take action. We have made it clear what action we'll take. We have given notice of the changes so that people can make their plans accordingly. And when there are special cases, there is a special cases exemption so that we can both control immigration and do our moral duty to protect those people who seek our protection and be an attractive place for people to come and work.
Kim Johnson.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since 2020, we have supported 413 projects through our Safer Streets Fund and also the Safety of Women at Night Fund, investing over £150 million, including £3.9 million, which has been designated to Merseyside. The objective of the fund is to improve public protection, particularly that of women, particularly at night, and independent evaluation shows that it is more than achieving its objective.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, but I don't really think the Minister answered the question about the impact on the reduction. Merseyside has now received a combined reduction of £180,000 to our Safer Streets Fund in round 5. And our Police and Crime Commissioner, Emily Spurrell, has called this ill-considered and short-sighted because projects have already begun and delivery is underway, but the funding has been restricted yet again. So will the Minister agree today to reinstate the lost funding so that Merseyside Police and others can continue their great work keeping our streets safe?
Minister.
May I just gently tell the Honourable Lady that in the last round of funding, round 4, the Merseyside received £1.3 million through the Safer Streets Fund. That was quadruple what it had received in round 3. And over £500,000 of this was designated specifically into CCTV and street lighting in Liverpool city centre. Round 5 should be seen in the context of record funding into the Merseyside Police, who received an unprecedented uplift of £27.6 million, a 6.5% uplift. I am confident that Merseyside will still be able to deliver its schemes, including the Safe Homes cards, providing safe transport to help women get home from night spots in this round.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Essex, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Roger Hurst has used the Safer Streets money to pay for CCTV and safety measures in the bunny walks, to pay for safety improvements around the Chelmsford prison to keep residents safe, and also more recently for CCTV cameras in Central Park and the avenues and extra safety measures around the cathedral. Despite all this, the local Lib Dems want to take credit for all of Roger's work. So will the Home Secretary pop down to Chelmsford to come and see me and Roger and make sure that we say thank you to Roger for all he's done with his government money to keep people safe.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. She is correct. Roger Hurst has an exceptional track record as a police and crime commissioner. He's done outstanding work driving down antisocial behaviour and domestic burglary. And the examples she gives are exactly what the Safer Streets Fund is for. Bespoke, local, dedicated services that will improve public protection. I know that the Essex Police have higher numbers than at any point in their 185-year history, and I will certainly urge the Home Secretary to pay them a visit at the next available opportunity.
Shadow Minister Alex Davis-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on behalf of the whole Shadow Home Affairs team, can I please place on record our sincere condolences on the loss of your father. Mr. Speaker, following the horrific killing of Kulsuma Akhtar in Bradford, who was tragically stabbed to death in broad daylight while pushing her 3-year-old son in a pram, West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester Police have referred themselves for investigation because of prior contact with Kulsuma and her husband, who has since been arrested for her murder. Cases of multiple contact with the police before violent escalation are all too common. Labour will mandate domestic abuse and wider violence against women and girls training for every police officer in the country, and we'll introduce Raneem's Law to overhaul the policing response when reports are first made. So I ask the Minister, how many more women will have to die before the government can do the same?
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Lady is right to mention the case of Kulsuma Akhtar. It is appalling what happened to her. I obviously can't comment on any specifics in relation to the case, but she will know that the bail conditions that the perpetrator had been released under contained restrictions that were breached themselves. So it was not a case of the court refusing to apply conditions, it is that he breached them. In relation to her wider point, of course, every single one of these cases is a tragedy. She will know, because we've worked on a cross-party basis in the past, how much time and attention we dedicate to this at the Home Office. But I will simply say this. We now have domestic abuse training that has been rolled out to over 80% of forces. The Home Secretary and I are working very, very closely with the 9 outstanding ones. They are on a timetable for delivery. I want to reassure her of that. And we now, this month, have specialist trained rape specialists in every single police force in England and Wales.
Tim Law.
Number 3, sir.
Minister.
Thank you. Look, I thank my right honourable friend enormously for raising this question. Let me be quite clear that the hostile activity we've seen from Chinese authorities and state-affiliated groups poses a serious threat to the security and well-being of the British people and to our partners and allies across the world. The Deputy Prime Minister came to this chamber last month to speak about the pattern of maligning activity, including the targeting of our parliamentarians and 2 malicious cyber campaigns by Chinese state-affiliated actors. We must never be afraid to stand up for ourselves and to call out this kind of activity that has targeted both him and me.
Tim Law.
Mr. Speaker, can I add my personal condolences for your father's losses as well? Can I say to my right honourable friend that, of course, we had the scandal about the hacking of MPs' email accounts back in March. We subsequently learned that the FBI had informed our government about this incident 2 years ago, as well as other foreign governments who had legislators who were also affected. Why has it taken 2 years for us to be told about a serious security breach? And will he now, with his colleagues in Cabinet, make sure that China is absolutely treated as and labelled as a threat and not just an epoch-defining systemic challenge, and everything is done urgently to put China in the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme?
Minister.
My right honourable friend, who's given this House and our country exceptional service over many years and will sadly be standing down in the next election, has made, again, some very, very strong points. The first of which is that he knows the language that I use and he's heard the words that I've said. The reality is that we face threats from around the world, and many of them, sadly, are emerging out of Beijing today. We know this, we've seen it, and many of us in this House feel it. So this is not something that we're shying away from. The reality, however, is that there are many different ways of answering it. Now, he's raised a very important aspect on furs, and that's something that, of course, is being looked at. But he will have heard the words of the Deputy Prime Minister in this chamber only a few weeks ago, and how clearly he made himself heard.
Chris Brown.
I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced by the government's attitude on this. When the Deputy Prime Minister came to see us a few weeks ago, he didn't say anything new. He announced things about events that had happened 2 years ago. But the member himself knows of attempts by the Chinese government to undermine the work of the Foreign Affairs Committee of this House. Why are we only ever told about things that happened years ago? If we're surely to take these issues seriously, we have to have an up-to-date and present account of the activities of the Chinese state.
Minister.
The right honourable member will know very well that when there is a reason to act quickly and to draw it to the attention of the House, we do, as is the case of Christine Lee, which you will remember involved the payment of money to a certain member of this House, and the reason why we took that action was because, of course, we needed to expose it fast.
Minister Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Biometrics and Surveillance Camera Commissioner said last year that our policing and security services were technologically vulnerable because of their use of Chinese-made equipment, including CCTV, drones and body cameras. So, can the Minister say whether the digital asbestos of Chinese-made technology is still used in our policing and security infrastructure? Yes or no?
Minister.
My honourable friend will know very well that the work of Mr Fraser before he retired last year, or ended his mandate last year, has been absolutely fantastically important to many of us in making sure, and I approve the term digital asbestos, is got out of our institutions. This is something that's ongoing, so it's got out of the most secure sites already, but there are other areas where there is work to do, because of course there were an awful lot of sites, I'm afraid, which bought technology which would now be problematic. Of course, it's not just static sites. There is, of course, the potential that some electric vehicles could be easily turned into mobile intelligence gathering platforms by hostile states, and so it's not simply about looking at the past, but also at the future.
I respect.
Question 4, sir.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in 2023 we delivered a strong removal performance with overall returns back to pre-COVID levels. In total, 26,000 were returned, an increase of 74% at an average of 500 removed every week last year.
I'm grateful to the Minister's response. Can he update the House on how his department is prioritising the return of foreign national offenders to their home countries to keep the streets and communities of the United Kingdom safe?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I firstly pay tribute to my honourable friend and the work that goes on in his constituency, because as he knows, I visited Gatwick recently and saw for myself the good work of the Border Force team were doing there, and he'll be pleased to know that removals of foreign national offenders were up last year by 27%, and that we're committed to the removal of foreign criminals and those with no right to be in the United Kingdom.
Yes, come on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On that point, I sadly see many asylum seekers in Newport who are stuck in limbo due to this government's incompetence. However, can I draw the Minister's attention to the case of a man in Newport who lied about his name and country of origin, is a convicted sex offender who's breached the terms of his licence, and the courts want him returned home. He wants to return home and will even pay for his flight, but for some unfathomable reason,
I just so bad. Corporate synergies. They were so bad.
He came on last week, a couple weeks ago, and went on the show. Then he came in, I was looking for him. He was I come from our discussion. And Mark couldn't do it because there's no Dutch man. He would have come just for the fucking hearing. So he did this whole Mark discussion.
All right.
We will never get that access again. Let us right in front of the festival.
Sometimes you like want to think he wants to make people, but then there's no
You got a new car, so we're loading it up today. You just took it. I'm getting mine in August. August. Well, it's because of the convention. It's 1 week. They also gave us back our vacation.
In the end, they made out. There's no way they would have given back to us. They're not making out. If we lost 2 things, we lost 2 days or something. Crazy, man. Small world.
South Park and Friends beat King Charles. South Park and Friends beat King Charles. Reruns. Beat King Charles. You're going to have to go up to the last second. Down or all the way to the last second.
Let me see that. I haven't like. Yeah, I know. It is over.
Question and a report. There you go.
do that.